Alles, was du über Keto, Low Carb und Paleo wissen musst. Evolution Radio Show, dein Programm für evolutionäre Gesundheit, präsentiert von Julia Tulipan.
Mein heutiger Gast ist Murman. Anders ist Unternehmer, Vorstandsmitglied und Geschäftsführer mit langjähriger Erfahrung in der Medizintechnikbranche, sowohl in börsennotierten Unternehmen als auch in privaten Unternehmen. Er hat viel Erfahrung in Forschung und Entwicklung, vor allem eben von Medizinprodukten. Er hält einen Master of Science in technischer Physik von der Universität Uppsala. Anders ist Geschäftsführer und Founder von Diversify, einem schwedischen Unternehmen, welches sich auf die Entwicklung von Atemmessgeräten spezialisiert hat. Das erste Produkt, das Diversify aktuell zur Marktreife gebracht hat, ist der ACETRACK, ein Gerät zur Messung von Aceton. Aceton ist ein Gas, das bei der Verstoffwechselung von Fett und Ketonen spontan entsteht und über die Lunge abgeatmet wird. Somit ist der Nachweis von Aceton in der Atemluft ein direkter Nachweis dafür, dass aktuell Fette oder Ketone verbrannt werden. Wir sprechen in diesem Interview über die Herausforderungen bei der Entwicklung von verlässlichen und benutzerfreundlichen Atemmessgeräten. Was genau macht ACETRACK so besonders und so verlässlich? Was muss man bei der Messung in der Atemluft beachten und welche Faktoren können Messwerte beeinflussen? Was kannst du aus der Messung von Aceton lernen und warum du nicht unbedingt in Ketose sein musst, um von ACETRACK profitieren zu können? Das Interview ist auf Englisch, aber keine Angst, bin mir sicher, dass du es gut verstehen kannst. Wenn dir die Folge gefällt, teile sie gerne mit anderen. Für Top-Infos zu Keto und weiteren genialen Podcast-Folgen schau auf meinem YouTube-Kanal vorbei oder auf Facebook und Instagram.
Gute Laune in Kapseln, gibt sowas? Vielleicht nicht ganz, aber was dem noch am nächsten kommt, sind die neuen Mood-Kapseln von Brain Effect. Was ist drinnen in den Mood-Kapseln? Die wichtige Aminosäure L-Tryptophan sowie Rosenwurzextrakt. Beides sind Substanzen, die in klinischen Studien gezeigt haben, dass sie sich positiv auf die Stresstoleranz auswirken und auch positiv auf das psychische Wohlbefinden. Zusätzlich ist noch Vitamin D und die wichtigsten B-Vitamine drinnen. Alles Vitamine, die dafür notwendig sind, dass du richtig gut Serotonin produzieren kannst, unser Glückshormon. Mit den Mood-Kapseln vom Brain Effect kannst du dir deine kleine Dosis Glück holen und etwas für dein psychisches Wohlbefinden tun. Schau also auf brain-effekt.com vorbei. Und mit dem Rabattcode KETO20 kannst du 20% Rabatt auf alle Einzelprodukte holen. Welcome to the Evolution Radio Show.
Thank you.
I am really, really happy to have you as a guest today. We are talking about breath ketone meters and measuring breath ketones and all things around that topic. And you're probably one of the most knowledgeable persons about the breath ketones. And that's why I'm really, really happy to have you as a guest. But before we dive into that topic and talk all about ketones and ketone measurements, I really want you to tell us, me and my listeners, more about, your background. Who are you? What got you interested in the topic? So, please give us a look into your past and your present, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. And first of all, thank you for having us on here. It's a privilege. It's the first one in Central Europe in terms of podcasts for me too. So that's also a privilege. And I think this will be a good discussion around this. So you're right. Currently, So my name is Murman. I'm 54 years old. I am Swedish and I live in Uppsala, a university town north of Stockholm. And currently I am the CEO and co-founder of Diversify. And Diversify are a health tech innovator, developer, producer, provider, and go-to-market actor within consumer health. And right now, the first few years, we are very much focused on metabolic health in various ways. And our prime product, as we will get into, is ACETRACK, which is the first breathalyzer that has the accuracy and repeatability that you would expect, and that we are selling now throughout Europe. And my background is that I'm a physicist by training, an engineer. I have a Master of Science in Engineering Physics. And I have worked all my adult life within medtech, within specialized medicine, 21 years, first in radiation therapy of cancer. I've been to the main university hospitals around the world, I have to say. I've been to AKH in Vienna, for example. That was one of my first trips. I installed the system there. So after 21 years in that field, I got recruited as CTO to a company called Aerocrine, and I started working with breathalyzers for the first time. This was 9 years ago. And we were building a breathalyzer to detect nitric oxide in your breath in parts per billion. And if you have nitric oxide in your breath from your bronchial tree, you have something related to inflammatory asthma. So I got into breathalyzers, and then I did some other small works with startups within pharmacology and addiction care. And then since 5.5 years back, I'm full-time working in my own company and working with products, particularly around breathalyzers, but also around digital products, around education, and trying to help people. I usually put it this way. I put physics into the service of public global health. And I think there's a lot to be done in terms of utilizing physics more than we have actually.
That's very, very interesting. And so also to get the broader picture of your mission, kind of probably. So you talked about metabolic health, and so the breathalyzers are just one part of broader portfolio, or and as I understood it, that there is much more like educational content, and that probably, I don't know, augments or that both things work together, like the wearables or the tech together with education. So that's kind of a very similar approach as we as at Tulipans try to follow. We have product and the education, same as you, because I think we both can agree on that there is a lot of need for education, and that's probably why I don't know, it's synergistically kind of. So why? Okay, obviously, if you talk about metabolic health, you kind of, I don't know, land at keto, or probably measuring ketones as a proxy for maybe fat burning. But how was your journey, or how did you find keto, and was it something something strange in the beginning, or did it kind of make sense from the start?
Oh, I like that question. And it is kind of maybe surprising in a way. And I think I heard the word keto and ketosis 2015 for the first time. And then I had worked all my life in specialized medicine. I worked with cancer. I worked with pulmonology. And there's a number of things that, to be honest, within the traditional healthcare system, people back then at least didn't talk about nutrition and how it plays into lifestyle diseases at all. This happened to be that the first time someone mentioned to it was that when they heard I was CTO at Aerocrine building breathalyzers, then someone, light went on. This is an old friend of mine asked me, have you heard of ketosis? No, I haven't heard about it. Do you think you can measure acetone? Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know much about acetone, but yeah, I think so. And then a year later, I actually I was working as a consultant there for various companies. I got this first task to look into if this could be done. And I actually built an early prototype. This was, again, 6 years ago. So, and then eventually when we had started the company and we had got a little bit funded, we had actually 3 different ideas. We had we had ACETRACK, what became ACETRACK. We had another idea around smoking cessation, where we would detect carbon monoxide in your breath, and that would be an indicator if you have deep inhaled smoke the last 24 hours. And then one in cardiology, mobile ECG. So we had 3 ideas. We had the funding only to build one product. So let's start with the one that I think would be easiest to build, lowest hanging fruit, and maybe kind of lightweight. That's what I thought back in 2017, 5 years ago. And I didn't know then that that would turn into this entire field of need of within metabolic health. And I'm not saying we're just a little small jigsaw puzzle piece in that big puzzle, but we have been now we're totally focused on metabolism and products around that, and education. Gastrointestinal disease is our next product. So those things around smoking and around cardiology, they will have to wait, because the need, you know this, but the need of obesity around the world, the need for better tools to prohibit and maybe reverse diabetes type 2, etc. This is more important than cancer too, in my view. So I would say that our vision and it's our moral plight to do things around metabolism, and that's what I'm dedicated now. Just like the Tulipan company.
Yeah, definitely. So metabolic health is definitely an important field, since it's probably at the core of most, if not all, Western or chronic diseases.
Yeah,
I think so. That's why it makes the most sense or the most impact to start there, probably. So, and that's why it's so interesting. And what also is interesting, that giving the power back to the user to measure, I think that's a really, really big step, because as everyone knows, I think what gets measured gets managed, and you get instant feedback. And that's something I think, especially in the health realm, is really the key, because if you follow an unhealthy lifestyle, it takes years, if not decades, to have a negative outcome. You have you feel the negative consequences. And that's why it's so difficult. Even smoking, for example, even everyone knows the dangers of smoking. The people smoke because the negative outcomes are so far in the future. And that's why I think everything that we can measure, and everyone can measure by him or herself at home, will make a huge impact on the decision we make, or decisions we make. So that's why I'm absolutely on the same page with you, and that this is really, really important. And also building those gadgets, those things we can use for home testing. Before we talk more about really the applications and the learnings we can draw from those measurements, I really want to start talking about the actual measuring itself. So you said
it seemed, at least in the beginning, as something easy to do. But can you just give us a tour? How does it work? What are the challenges? And yeah, there are kind of other products out there who try to do the same, but I'm sure there are differences. So maybe you can give us a walkthrough to the different steps of measuring something in the breath.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to, and that's also to be added with the big important decisions to build our products and big mission. There's also a physicist in me that says, come on, because there were a number of devices out there for breathalyzing of aceton when I started the project, and then we started the project, and I think, this can be done better. Let's put it that way. So when we designed it, and it was started design 4 years ago, it's been on the market about 3 years in Europe, and primarily selling it for 1.5 years. My experience from Aerocrine and others were that the main first order of effect in terms of accuracy and repeatability is not the sensor of detecting the gas, the acetone sensor. The first order of effect is that you sample in the same way every time you exhale. And I usually put that best by saying, if you give me any alcohol breathalyzer, I can fool it, because I know how they work and I know how you can trick it. The important thing when it comes to, let me back up also very shortly about ketosis. So your listeners, and you certainly know a lot about ketosis, a lot more than I do. But the biochemistry of it is that when you have done everything right and your insulin levels and cortisol levels and everything is fine, your brain will start telling the system of your body to start burning fat, and they will check out fatty acids from the fat cells into the bloodstream, and it will come to the liver. The liver get an order to say, yeah, let's start building ketone bodies to drive the brain and the muscle cells. And when one fatty acid is broken down in the mitochondria of the liver, it will fall into 3 pieces, to put it shortly. The first one is beta hydroxybutyric, the BHB, which drives the brain and the muscle cells. And that one can be measured in blood with blood sampling. We'll come back to that. The second and immediate part, not so important for now, is acetoacetate, which is communicating a little bit with the BHB, and that can be measured in your urine with urine sticks. And the third part, which is the fumes of this hybrid engine, the spillover, is acetone. Acetone is a pre-volatile gas. If you've ever smelled on nail polish remover bottle, you can smell how sticky it is, and that's the only way acetone then, which sits out in the bloodstream from the liver, the only way it exits the body is that you ventilate it out from the bottom of your lung in the alveoli. It will siphon out, and with a half-life of about 30 minutes. So that's what we detect. But as I just said, so the whole story of the ketosis is that if you want to detect it, it will come from the bottom of your lungs. Therefore, we have made sure that we sample in a long, steady breath with the same pressure all the time. Like, so hard. I actually blew too hard, and we like blowing, exhaling through a straw. So you blow but with steady pressure, and then we sample the last little air that you breathe out after 6 full seconds. And you do that so this is the ACETRACK, and you exhale in it while you're looking at your phone. So it's Bluetooth connected to your phone, and we do that by visually feeding back your exhalation pressure. So you kind of keep it all the way down in the green area, and then eventually we take the last sample, and that will then, this is now TV here for the radio listeners. This is the printed circuit board of ACETRACK, and this is the sensor, the acetone sensor. And so that gas will diffuse into the sensor. It'll take about 30 seconds, and then we will get the peak value of your acetone in parts per million. And, that's what we built. We're very happy. I have to say, as a general disclaimer, that any gas measurement is not like measuring your temperature or measuring your pulse or measuring your weight or length. Those are easy, solid measurements. Measuring gas is more volatile. But given that, we're really happy, and I think our 2,500 users are happy with. I think we've come as far as we can in terms of repeatability and accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had the opportunity to test the ACETRACK, and I also tested different other ketone measuring devices, so breathalyzers. And so I can just confirm what you are saying, that I never had the same repeatability with the other devices. So there is definitely that's definitely something very, very outstanding with the ACETRACK. And what also is interesting, that with other devices you had to breathe really, really long. So it might be. So I have a good lung volume, but it might be really difficult for others who even be able to breathe in that kind of way. So what I find really interesting is that you managed to develop the sensor in a way, or the analytics behind it, that it can give you reliable data and repeatable numbers, even though the breathing isn't, like...
It's not an exact science in that sense.
Yeah.
Breathing can be different from breath to breath. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, but it's really repeatable.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why we can do that, and that's including all the alcohol breathalyzers, none of them have a built-in tiny little thing there from Switzerland. It's a differential pressure sensor from Syrian. And what a pressure sensor does is it kind of, and then with the visual feedback, you force the user to exhale in the same way every morning. Every time you measure, you're going to eventually end up doing it in the same way. And I don't know, I can't speak for the others. That particular part of electronics is the most expensive part on it, but it's still not very expensive. It doesn't raise the price of the product very much. So I guess I did that because that was my experience of building early breathalyzers. I was talking about the one for asthma. There we had to detect things in parts per billion. That's a order of magnitude, 3 orders of magnitude more rare to find. And therefore, with that product, which was a medical product selling to hospitals, but still we had a pressure sensor inside the device. If you don't have it in the device, you don't know, you can't force the user to be exact.
Yeah. So the pressure sensor kind of helps you to standardize the breathing. Yeah,
absolutely. It's like driving a car without a meter. So then you don't know how fast you're driving. But with the pressure sensor, you get immediate feedback saying that this is how hard you exhale. Continue or blow harder or softer.
When I breathe into the ACETRACK, my phone gives me a number, so parts per million. So you have kind of different steps or different thresholds where you have decided that this is no ketosis, this is low ketosis, this is a deep ketosis. Is this based on how did you kind of sort of came up with those thresholds? How did you evaluate this?
When we released the first version of the product, I was very much against having thresholds or saying something, because the first thing I have to say is that this is first and foremost a relative device. You should use it every morning in the same, when you wake up, at least every morning for a month, I would say, before you can start really draw conclusions for yourself. So it's not as easy as using a thermometer or whatever. But that's fine. I mean, the important thing in it is that it will detect everything given the same if you're burning fat one morning and maybe not the next. What the conclusion that people, that if you look at me myself, when I'm not in ketosis, I have values around 10, maybe typically 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning, right up before I brush my teeth or drink any coffee or anything. Is exhale immediately. And then when I'm in ketosis, I have values around 40, 50, 60. So it's a multiple. The signal is is huge actually compared to when I'm not in ketosis. That's not the same for everybody, but what typically people have been doing is, and that's why we eventually entered the indications and the coloring, where we have everything under 15 is not in ketosis, everything over 30 or everything over. I'm saying right now, everything under 10 is not in ketosis. Everything over 25 is ketosis, and the other one is some gray area in between. But that's just based on the hundreds of thousands of measurements we have. And a guesstimate. You could actually, in the latest version of the app, you can set your own thresholds. So my advice to the users and what our users are doing is that it's not a competition. You don't compare to others. It's not like the millimoles per liter you have on blood ketones with an Abbott, but it's it's close. The important thing is that you compare with yourself. The important thing is, when I'm out, why did I go out? And when the surprising things, our vision is that everyone should understand their own health, and you will understand your metabolism and when you go in and out of ketosis a lot better with this device than anyone else. And why is that? Yeah, because I didn't say that earlier, but the acetone is a proof of if you've started going into ketosis or burning fat 10 minutes ago. When you measure in blood sampling, that's a mean value of your BHB over the last 12 hours or 24 hours. And that mean value is also going up and down depending on how much you consume with your brain and with your muscles. So I usually say that measuring the BHB, if you have BHB in your blood, you've definitely at some point been in ketosis. But it's also a measurement of how much you have in your gas tank. It can be low. If you don't find any BHB, it doesn't mean that you never were in ketosis. You could have just consumed it. While if you have a high value with ACETRACK, if you have acetone in your breath, you burn fat 10 minutes ago or 10 minutes to 1 hour ago. That's for sure. You can't get a high value without having acetone in your breath. So I think they can complement each other also a little bit. But many of our users in Sweden now that have been using it for a year or two, they've stopped doing the blood sampling because they realize that it's going to be enough with one of them. Yeah,
it probably also depends on why you're doing a ketogenic diet. So, but we are talking about metabolic health, and what's more important with metabolic health than burning fat. So that's why it's the most, I get it. It's the most, reliable marker for burning fat.
Experienced users are, sorry for interrupting, but they are really at the point where they're actually not using it all the time. But maybe if you go, many of the most advanced people here that have a metabolic need to improve your metabolism, and they've been trained and they've been in ketosis and then they fall out for various reasons, maybe deliberately even to work on your metabolic flexibility. But whatever reason, they also come back to it. Now I'm going to do this after summer vacations, let's say. And then they pick out their ACETRACK again because they want to know if they did the right thing last night. So that's my typical example is that I can see myself, if I could have eaten ketogenic all week long, and then I took a snack at 9 o'clock the evening before. I'm out the next morning, or I just had a bad night's sleep, or I'm stressed. I'm out. Yeah, you fall out of it so easily. It's hard to get into it. And then that's the confirmation. It's just a check saying, yeah, well, I didn't get into keto, and let's see what happened next morning, and etc. So you get it. So it serves a purpose, and it needs to be combined with everything else of your understanding and with other measurements as well. I'm not saying we're replacing blood sampling, but having a breathalyzer is of course much more convenient. It's non-invasive. You can measure as much as you want, and it doesn't cost you anything. Have the device.
Yeah, definitely. I was just wondering because when with blood ketones and with urine, for example, urine measurement, it's the longer you are in ketosis, the lower are your values that you're getting. Sometimes you can be in ketosis and measure nothing at all in the urine. So you get a false negative, or what I have experienced is that people who are starting keto, they can measure very high BHB values in the beginning, and the longer they are doing it, the lower the values are getting. Is there anything similar happening with acetone? Does it?
Yeah, it's the same. That's the same, and that's not because of the blood measurement device or our device or any other device. No. It's just how evolutionary our body works. We're not built to be on the same diet all our lives. We were built evolutionary to feed and energize our body based on all the macronutrients that are out there, but not in the same way all the time. And our body and our brain is wired in a way that I usually say it's a greedy banker. It wants to save us. So even if you find the best diet you can ever have, what our ACETRACK users see is that 3 months, 6 months, it will start storing fat, because that's eventually the brain will protect itself and saying that, great, this one is burning fat all the time. Let's stop that. Because it is always preparing for a winter that will come. And if you don't have any body fat or any, but it will try to save into the bank. It's
sure.
Needy in that sense.
Yeah.
So flexibility is, and you know this more than I, but I can only fill in that we see that among our users as well, is that it's no one is in ketosis all the time, except maybe some epileptics that have found some. But I do think they actually are varying their diet as well in terms of fasting or not fasting and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one other reason is that the body just gets much more efficient in using the ketones, and just doesn't need to produce that much.
You're right.
And it gets better in burning, just fats and but this would be, So I think there are two different mechanisms at work. So.
And one other thing I like to add is that I've seen it myself if I've done it. I remember last year I did a 3 full day water fasting. And I had low values all the time, and I got really angry. And then I did a lot of exercise and had like 3, 4 all the time. And then in the Monday evening, I broke the fast with eggs and mayonnaise and I don't remember. And then in the morning I had like 50. So I needed to also add, and this is very important to everyone to know, you need to add dietary fat. It seems if you don't add dietary fat, even if you have a lot of fat in your body, and last year I did have a lot more than I have today, you won't get there. At least for me, it's individual, but that's why people are, and me as well, is, having coffee with MCT oil or whatever in the morning, or at some point, dietary fat plays into the role. No, I don't think anyone knows exactly how it works, but heuristically, that seems to be the cause.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to measuring actually, and you briefly mentioned that one should measure in the morning before you have coffee or anything else. So my question is, what do I have to look for to really kind of get no false measurements, no false readings? What could influence my acetone measurements?
A great question. We can start with what influences the sensor. The acetone sensor that I showed you on the printed circuit board is the only one existing on the world market right now. We're working on actually our own, but that's coming up in a few years. So this current sensor also has a certain sensitivity to ethanol, to alcohol. So ACETRACK does not work if you have recently drunk alcohol. It works as soon as you have metabolized your alcohol, which is typically done immediately by the liver. It works fine. So, and particularly The other thing, it can affect the numbers to get a positive, high, negative, incorrect, high value is mouth gases. And that's why I said that with some menthol, for example, menthol chewing gum, menthol snuff, as we have in Sweden. A lot of Swedes have high values because they're snuffing at the same time. And toothpaste typically have menthol. And that's just the mouth gases. It's nothing that comes from the bottom of your lungs, but it is, molecules close to acetone that is just exuded through your respiratory tract or your mouth, simply. So that typically fades away within 10 to 15 minutes. So that's one answer. And the other thing to mention, and why I said measure in the morning, is that you want to have comparable times, because the values goes up and down during 24 hours. That's really important that it does for everyone. It's not like the BHB, which is a mean value in your bloodstream. It's all even and it goes up and down slowly like a long sinus curve. While your ppm values of acetone, it will go up when the liver is actually doing the work. It's like a little engine that is not kicking in all the time. It's regulating. And it seems to be doing that primarily when we sleep, or when it's calm, when all the top hormones of your body is not acting. So during daytime, most people, I would say 95%, even if they have high in the morning, high in the evening, they have low values during daytime, because you have adrenaline, you have dopamine, you have a number of top hormones that simply, it seems like the body, the production of BHB is a low priority task. I typically say that when are you filling the grocery store shelves? It's not in rush hour. Mm-hmm. You fill it up before you open in the morning in a grocery store. And that's typically what happens. For me, at least, I always have highest number. If I'm in ketosis, my highest numbers are in the morning, which indicates if I could measure in the middle of the night while sleeping, which I can't, I would probably have 1 hour before I wake up is probably the peak of it. But it doesn't matter. Coming back to the repeatability, if you measure 7:30 every morning for a full week, you will start to learn things there. That's why I'm saying. So don't wait one morning at 7:30 and next morning 10 o'clock, because other things will have happened in your hormonal system that will affect when the production of ketosis is. So, which means that you're not falling out of ketosis, just that the liver is not doing the refinement. You have refineries of oil to gas. This is what the liver does. Mm-hmm. So the oil is actually literally the fat, and then that is refined into BHB. So what we are measuring with ACETRACK is the refinement process. If everyone can kind of remember that, then you will start to understand, I can fall out. I will have low values between 10 and 7 in the evening, and then will start rising again.
And when we talk about gases coming from your mouth, I'm also thinking about my stomach, because there are sometimes, bacteria or other foods who could, emit gases, and coming out from my stomach. Are there any learnings? Do you know anything? So which foods could change the values there if I have recently eaten?
Yeah. So, good question. So for ACETRACK, which has an acetone sensor, the only other gas that has correlation with that, except ethanol and acetone, of course, is methane. And methane is typically produced, particularly for lactose intolerance people. It's produced if you consume a lot of lactic food, like milk. Mm-hmm. But that also, again, only affects people. So we don't really have any given proof. When we did the testing before we had launched products 3-4 years ago, we were testing extreme variants where we're drinking liters of milk, and then we could see an elevated value. So in practice, I wouldn't say that even milk affects it in terms of coming from your belly or from your intestines. But with that said, we're actually working and have announced a new product this summer called Abdomatic, which will be a gastrointestinal disease kind of measurement device. It's going to be breathalyzer, just like ACETRACK, but instead of measuring acetone in your breath, we will measure methane, as I mentioned, and hydrogen.
Is it for SIBO?
That's exactly it. So it will be a diagnostic tool as well as a home monitoring tool for SIBO, but not only SIBO, it's also for IBS in general, IBS bellies, and even for lactose intolerance. If you look at people that are lactose intolerant, they typically done one blood measurement once in life, and then they say, now I can't eat cheese anymore. And they think that for all their life, but it's just based on one measurement, and the inner cellular curtain of your small intestine is exchanging. All the cells there exchange every 3 months. So it's lifestyle driven, and if you just change your lifestyle for a longer time, maybe it heals. Who knows? So don't you agree? It's kind of absurd that you get one kind of sentence once in life. Now you can't drink milk. That's not the way it is. And to have a home monitor tool for lactose intolerance also would be a volume product for us, but also something that I think could help people put a number on how their gut is.
Definitely. And one other thing,
that's a coming product.
One other thing I was wondering, so I've never tried it myself, but I've just heard people talking about it or reporting it that that people who are eating a very high carb diet get high readings of acetone. So not with ACETRACK, but with other devices. Is this a problem because the other devices are somehow faulty in some way, or is there a mechanism behind it?
Well, biologically, it's not. There's only one cellular mitochondrial process in the body that produces acetone. The only one that does that is the liver mitochondria breaking. That's it. You can't have acetone unless you've been drinking acetone. You can't have that in your bloodstream in any other part of cell biology.
But could it be that I was just thinking about, so when you're talking about gastric gases,
it could be methane.
Could it be methane or something that's kind of fermented, or that there is some process going on in your intestines or in the gut or in the stomach that produces some other gases?
But I never heard of it. So I'm a gas expert. So as I said, there is in our sensor, at least, it depends on how much it is heated. The sensor for us is heated to 425 degrees inside. It won't start burning, but that's to get a maximum sensitivity to acetone. And then you have around 300 degrees, it will have maximum sensitivity on alcohol, and then around 200 on methane. So they're all related. They're all kind of the same. It's just a number of different carbon atoms in them. But that has to be, it's up to those other providers. We don't have a correlation with methane.
So you have never seen this?
No, I haven't. If you remember back in the day, people were measuring ketosis. That's before I learned it, but I realized that with alcometers, because you take an alkobreathalyzer and then don't drink alcohol and still get a high value, that could be indication that you have acetone in your breath.
Probably,
It's very inaccurate, I have to say. But that, before there were breathalyzers, people were doing that. Maybe you did too. I don't know. But no, you didn't. But for the alcohol breathalyzers, they typically also have a correlation with acetone. That's the only correlation I know of, really, that can affect any breathalyzer that I know of is with alcohol versus acetone.
Okay, I was just wondering, because maybe, if you say alcohol, some people we call it the brewery inside your intestines. So some people are actually making alcohol out of food in their intestines. So if they're on a very high carb diet, and some some can produce alcohols. So maybe there is a correlation there. And because they produce actually alcohol in their intestines, and that's getting out.
I think yes. It seemed very interesting. I would love to try that with someone who's eating that much carb, but I understand most of all our users are avoiding carbs. But I would say that the main explanation to that in the other devices would be interference, as you said.
Yeah.
Interference, and you're getting signal where you shouldn't get signal.
Oh, very, very interesting. And I think we have touched on the most important topics around breathalyzers, around measuring ketones in the breath. Is there anything else we have missed you want to add?
I got to talk about our coming products as well, so I like that. We didn't talk very much about measuring with urine sticks. I mean, that's been popular, and I still see that people are doing that. But the main problem with measuring with urine sticks is that is very much dependent on your concentration of your urine in general, and that goes up and down during the day and between days a lot more than necessarily your concentration of acetoacetate. So that one is the most inaccurate method theoretically in terms of the ketone bodies. And then in terms of measuring with your blood, measuring BHB with blood ketone sticks is not as accurate as people believe either, because typically you're measuring from your capillary things in the top of your fingers, and it doesn't necessarily be a correct representation of your BHB concentration in your general bloodstream. That's what you're after, the one that feeds your brain and your muscles. So all measurements of this type, all biological type of measurement, has inaccuracies. That's just a general statement.
Yeah.
General fact. We do too. So eventually, I would like to say, start measuring and start compare with yourself, because what we've been focusing on is your own comparison. That's why I want you to measure in the morning every time, because you get a comparable, and don't give up after 2 days. Don't give up after 1 week. Measure at least a full month. And what our typically the main product, the main typical user we have in Sweden are middle-aged women that have been yo-yo banting all their lives, and they just slowly decline in metabolic health status. And they go into prediabetes, and they get a lot of different various symptoms, and they get diagnosis of various kinds, all that. And so they're desperate, and then they start to get education, maybe from us or from others, and then eventually they might buy an ACETRACK, and they start measuring, and they say it doesn't work. They have low values all the time. And then one day, after months maybe, when they have, reversed their insulin resistance, suddenly you have 50. That's the hallelujah moment, and that's the whole point. And that's the value of ACETRACK, is that for those users that can understand, now I know I can't eat proteins after 8 o'clock or whatever it is. You can draw your own conclusions. That's my message to those users, is that, and that makes us happy, and then it means we provided a new value, a new understanding. I think that's the key of exploring.
Yeah, definitely. I think, what's also important is that you don't have to necessarily go for a ketogenic diet per se to learn something, because it's, as you said in the beginning, it shows you if your body burns fat. And that's what we are made for, and that's the main, proxy, or the best marker for metabolic health.
It is. And we don't recommend it. Many of our competitors have the name keto in their product name. We have decided to call it ACETRACK because it tracks acetone.
Yeah.
It's, close to it. It's a play words with racetrack and, all of that. But we don't recommend any diet, and there isn't one diet that works for everybody. And we don't take a stand in the vegan or carnivore debate either. We just say, if you want to know if you're burning fat, regardless if you're doing intermittent fasting or Mediterranean, or you got to do something typically. Then this one will tell you if it works or not over time. That's the thing. Personally, I have opinions, and I know what works for me. I don't eat breakfast anymore. I drink fat coffee in the morning. That's all, and I can't snack after 7. As soon as I do, I fall out. So I stopped doing that, and that's good for my metabolic health. I actually am a lot healthier now, 2 years later, than since I started measuring than I was before.
And I think so. With that, you already kind of answered my final question. What could someone learn from measuring? So we tapped into that topic a few times during our interview, but you kind of explained what you did learn from it, or what you're still learning, because I think so. We are never just in this one place and it never changes, but this is all a continuum of change. So if we are maybe sensitive to something now, but this could change over time. So because our cells are getting more sensitive to insulin, more flexible, more healthy. So we get more healthy mitochondria, and that changes the whole time. And I think that's also the value of having a device, a device to check regularly where I am, because things change, and you learn so much about yourself as you described.
Absolutely. So well put. I like that, and I would like to emphasize, because people think it's so static. It will change over the years if you've learned something, and you're just a whole pack of bioenergy. All of our body is almost all of it is bioenergy. It's just people tend to forget that. Which anything can be converted into anything. We're transformers in that sense. That we're hundreds of thousands of calories just carrying around. So of course we should be experimenting and turning around all the thoughts we have around diet. I think we have to, because we're built of what we've eaten. That's a very obvious thing to say, but I do think that people tend to forget. I think that it's very static, and it won't change. It will change a lot if you just be drastic enough, I would say.
Yeah. Anders, thank you very much for your time, for all the great information, input, and just this deep dive into breathalyzers and ketone measurements. I'm sure this answered a lot of questions from my listeners and viewers. And of course, I'm going to link to the ACETRACK shop, where it's possible to get it delivered to Germany, to Austria. So no problems there. It's super easy. It's shop.getacetrack.com/de. But if you just Google for ACETRACK, you'll find it as well. But I will link to the shop in the show notes, and to every information you want me to link to. If there's anything else you want to add or I should include in the show notes, I can do that.
We will look into that. Thank you, Julia. It was a very nice discussion, and I'm excited to see if we can get this started to be a part of German and Austrian keto community as well. That would be fine.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Halt, noch nicht ausschalten. Falls du mehr zu dieser Folge wissen möchtest, den Link zu den Shownotes findest du unten in der Videobeschreibung. Vielen lieben Dank für deinen Support. Jeder Daumen nach oben und jedes Abo hilft uns. Wenn du jetzt an jemanden denkst, dem diese Folge sicher weiterhelfen kann, dann teile sie doch. Wenn du eine unserer vorigen Folgen anschauen möchtest, die findest du gleich hier. Also, bis zum nächsten Mal.